It was a bitterly cold evening when Ethan Carter, a wildlife photographer, drove down a desolate road winding through the mountains. The thick snow muffled the sound of his tires crunching over the frozen path, and the sky stretched above him in an ominous shade of gray. He had been on a week-long expedition capturing rare wildlife in the snowy peaks, but the trip had been uneventful. The forest was eerily quiet, as if nature itself had gone into hiding. Just as he reached a sharp turn near an abandoned ranger station, a heavy thud startled him. Something had landed on his car hood. His heart lurched as he slammed the brakes. In the dim glow of his headlights, he saw it, a majestic golden eagle, its wings partially splayed, bleeding from one side. Ethan cautiously stepped out of the car, wary of spooking the injured bird. But the eagle didn't flinch. Instead, it locked eyes with him, its gaze almost pleading. "Easy there, buddy," Ethan murmured, reaching for his thick gloves. As he carefully picked up the bird, he noticed something strange. A thin leather strap was tied around its leg. Attached to it was a tiny, worn-out brass key. His brows furrowed. Who would attach a key to a wild eagle? And more importantly, to what? Ethan knew he had to act fast. The eagle was bleeding, and if he didn't tend to it, it wouldn't survive the night. His best bet was to take it to the abandoned ranger station up ahead, which he had passed earlier. The ranger station had been out of use for years. Its wooden walls were weather-beaten, but it still stood firm against the brutal elements. Inside, Ethan found an old first aid kit, likely left behind by the previous rangers. With careful hands, he treated the eagle's wound. As he worked, his mind kept drifting back to the brass key. He turned it over in his fingers, feeling the weight of its mystery. It was old, worn smooth from years of use. There was no marking to hint at what it unlocked. As he pondered, a soft scratching sound came from the door. Ethan froze. It wasn't the wind. He reached for his flashlight and slowly opened the door. The beam of light cut through the swirling snow, revealing faint footprints leading into the woods. Human footprints. Fresh. Someone had been here, watching him. A sudden flash of movement made Ethan swing the flashlight toward the trees. A flicker of red light blinked deep within the forest, vanishing almost instantly. Instinct told him to stay inside, but something deeper, perhaps fate, urged him to follow. He secured the eagle in a makeshift nest of blankets and stepped out into the cold, tracking the footprints into the dense forest. The deeper he went, the more the trees seemed to close in around him, the cold biting harder against his exposed skin. But then, a faint metallic glint caught his eye. Half buried in the snow was an old rusted hatch, the kind used in bunkers. The key in his pocket suddenly felt heavy. Ethan hesitated, then pulled out the key and fitted into the lock. It clicked. The hatch groaned as he lifted it open, revealing a dark passageway leading underground. His breath turned to mist in the cold air as he descended, flashlight flickering against damp stone walls. At the bottom, the passage opened into a hidden chamber. A single desk sat in the middle, covered in old documents, maps, and black and white photographs of eagles. One paper caught his eye, a faded government file labeled Project Sky Sentinel. Ethan's pulse quickened as he scanned the text. The eagles were being used as messengers, trained to carry classified intelligence between remote outposts decades ago. But when the project was shut down, many of the trained birds vanished. And now, one had found him. As Ethan pieced it together, a sound made him turn sharply, a metallic clank from above. Someone had closed the hatch. Panic surged through him as he rushed up the ladder, but just as he reached the top, the hatch burst open. Standing there was an elderly man, wrapped in a thick coat, holding a rifle. His face was worn but familiar. Ethan had seen it before, in one of the black and white photographs. "You weren't supposed to find this," the man said, lowering the rifle slightly. "But now that you have, you need to listen carefully." The old man, who introduced himself as Major Reed, had been part of the original Sky Sentinel project. But the mission was more than just surveillance. It involved a secret cache of Cold War-era intelligence, hidden deep within these mountains. The eagle that landed on Ethan's car? It had been carrying the last surviving key to that cache. "Someone else is looking for it," Reed warned, "and they won't stop until they find it." The red light Ethan had seen earlier, it wasn't just a random signal. It was a tracker. Someone else was out there searching. Before Ethan could respond, a series of gunshots rang out in the distance. The hunters had arrived. Reed acted fast, shoving a dusty satchel into Ethan's hands. "Take this. Everything you need to know is inside. Get the eagle and go. Now." Ethan didn't hesitate. He scrambled out of the bunker and sprinted back toward the cabin. The eagle, sensing danger, let out a piercing cry as Ethan scooped it up and dashed toward his car. Headlights cut through the storm. Black SUVs were speeding up the road. Ethan had seconds. He threw himself into the driver's seat, the engine roaring to life. As he sped away, gunfire erupted behind him. The eagle perched on the dashboard, its keen eyes locked on the road ahead as if guiding him forward. The satchel on the seat beside him held answers, secrets. And now, the chase had begun. Ethan had no idea where this road would lead. But one thing was certain. The eagle had chosen him for a reason. And he wouldn't stop until he uncovered the truth.